Alice sat at the small kitchen table, staring blankly at the divorce papers spread before her. The sun filtered weakly through the lace curtains, casting shadows over the life she had once known. She ran her fingers over the thick stack of documents, each page representing the unraveling of a marriage she had poured her entire existence into. The words blurred as tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. She wouldn't cry, not anymore. Victor, her husband of 15 years, had left her emotionally battered and drained. What had started as a partnership built on love and mutual respect had withered into a power dynamic where she was nothing more than an accessory to his ambitions. Victor's departure wasn't sudden, but it was brutal. He had packed his bags one morning without so much as a backward glance, leaving a curt note on the counter, "I found someone who matches my vision for the future." It was both a declaration of his infidelity and an indictment of her supposed inadequacy. Alice had devoted her life to him, giving up her dreams of becoming a teacher to raise their 2 children and support his career. Now, he stood tall and successful, while she felt like a shell of her former self. The silence of the house was deafening, filled only by the echo of his dismissive words. Her lawyer had warned her that the courtroom battle would be grueling. Victor was determined to leave her with nothing. He argued that she had been a mere bystander in their life together, offering no meaningful contributions to his rise as a prominent businessman. The idea stung deeply, but Alice was determined not to crumble. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of resistance, a faint ember of the strong woman she used to be. The day of the hearing arrived with an icy chill, the kind that seeped into Alice's bones as she stood outside the courthouse. Dressed in her best outfit, a modest navy blue dress paired with her grandmother's brooch, she clutched her purse tightly as if it were a lifeline. Victor's sleek black car pulled up moments later, and he stepped out with a confidence that turned heads. Beside him was his young, impeccably dressed attorney, exuding an air of smug superiority. Alice swallowed hard, refusing to let their display intimidate her. As they stepped into the courtroom, the atmosphere shifted. The cold sterility of the room contrasted sharply with the tension that crackled in the air. Victor's lawyer wasted no time, painting Alice as a liability, an uninspired homemaker who had leached off Victor's hard work. She brought nothing to the table, the lawyer sneered, pacing dramatically. Every success my client achieved was in spite of her, not because of her. Each word felt like a dagger, but Alice remained stoic, her fingers gripping the edge of the table in front of her. The judge, an older woman with piercing eyes, watched the proceedings with a detached curiosity. Alice felt a flicker of hope as the judge leaned forward during Victor's testimony, her expression unreadable but intense. "We'll hear her side soon enough," the judge said, her tone crisp. Alice's lawyer placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Stay strong," he whispered. Victor's voice dripped with condescension as he took the stand. "Alice didn't contribute to my success. If anything, she held me back," he said with a smirk. "I was the one working long hours, making deals, and building our life. She sat at home, watching soap operas and wasting time." The courtroom murmured, the harshness of his words cutting through the air like a whip. Alice felt her cheeks burn with shame and anger, but she kept her gaze steady, refusing to let him see her falter. Victor's lawyer elaborated on his claims, showing spreadsheets that depicted his rising income over the years. Notice the sharp incline in his earnings, coinciding with his decision to take full control of his career, the lawyer said, tapping the screen. Alice's lawyer objected, but the damage had been done. Victor looked pleased with himself, his confidence bordering on arrogance. Alice clenched her fists under the table. She had been the one to manage their household, ensuring that Victor never had to lift a finger outside of his work. She had handled their finances, planned his networking events, and raised their children. Every decision she made had been to support his goals. And yet, here he was, erasing her entirely. When it was Alice's turn to testify, she stood slowly, her knees trembling. Her lawyer encouraged her with a nod, and she took a deep breath. "I'm not here to discredit Victor's achievements," she began, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "But I won't stand by and let my contributions be dismissed." She recounted the sacrifices she had made, from quitting her job to care for their children to organizing fundraisers for Victor's company when it was in its infancy. Her lawyer presented evidence, emails showing her coordinating business events, receipts for educational materials she had bought for their children, and testimonies from friends and neighbors who had witnessed her efforts. Victor's success didn't happen in isolation, she said, her voice gaining strength. It was a partnership, even if he chooses not to see it that way. The judge listened intently, her expression softening. Victor's smugness faltered as the courtroom absorbed Alice's words. For the first time, she felt the tide begin to turn. As Alice returned to her seat, the silence in the courtroom was deafening. Her testimony hung in the air, a stark contrast to Victor's cold dismissal. Even Victor's lawyer seemed momentarily at a loss for words, shuffling papers to regain composure. The judge cleared her throat, her sharp gaze cutting through the tension. "Mr. Sullivan," she addressed Victor's lawyer, "I'd like to hear your client respond to these claims." Victor stood, adjusting his tie as he smirked. "Alice is exaggerating. Sure, she did the basics of running a household, but that's hardly noteworthy. Plenty of women do that without needing recognition." His tone was dismissive, almost bored, as if her contributions were beneath him. "I'm the one who took risks, made investments, and worked late into the night." The judge interjected. "And who managed your household during those late nights? Who raised your children and provided the stability you needed to take those risks?" Victor opened his mouth to reply but faltered. The judge leaned forward, her expression hardening. "Marriage is a partnership, Mr. Sullivan, not a hierarchy." "Continue." Alice's lawyer stood, unrolling a large presentation board. "Your Honor," he began, "we've prepared a breakdown of Mrs. Sullivan's contributions, both tangible and intangible, over the course of the marriage." The board displayed charts and photographs, Alice organizing charity events, budgeting spreadsheets she had created to manage their finances, and testimonials from teachers praising her involvement in their children's education. Victor's lawyer objected. "This is irrelevant. We're here to discuss financial contributions, not household chores." The judge raised a hand to silence him. "Financial contributions don't exist in a vacuum," she said. "I'm inclined to hear more." Alice felt a flicker of hope as her lawyer continued. He highlighted moments where Alice's meticulous planning had saved Victor's business ventures, pointing out that her unpaid labor had allowed him to focus solely on his career. Without her unwavering support, Mr. Sullivan's so-called achievements might never have been possible, he concluded. Victor's lawyer attempted to discredit Alice's claims, focusing on her lack of formal employment during their marriage. "It's convenient to claim responsibility for someone else's success when you have no career of your own," he argued, pacing in front of the jury box. "This is nothing more than an attempt to siphon money from a hard-working man." Alice's lawyer calmly rebutted. Mr. Sullivan's career relied on a foundation of stability provided by Mrs. Sullivan. The evidence we've presented shows that she wasn't just a passive participant but an active contributor. The judge nodded, her pen moving swiftly across her notes. Victor crossed his arms, his smug demeanor slipping. His confidence had been a weapon in their marriage, but in the courtroom, it was starting to crumble under the weight of Alice's undeniable evidence. Alice's first witness was an old friend, Martha, who had attended many of the fundraisers Alice had organized. "I remember Victor being skeptical about hosting these events at first," Martha said, smiling warmly at Alice. "But they brought in key investors who helped his company grow." Alice was the one who managed everything: decor, catering, guest lists. Victor just had to show up. Victor's lawyer tried to discredit Martha, suggesting her testimony was biased. "Of course she'd support her friend," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. But the next witness, a former colleague of Victor's, offered a similar account. Victor always credited his success to hard work, the colleague admitted, but behind the scenes, it was Alice who kept everything running smoothly. She even gave him advice on how to approach certain deals. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs as witness after witness corroborated Alice's story. Each testimony chipped away at Victor's narrative of self-made success. The judge called for a recess, giving everyone a chance to regroup. Alice sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, her lawyer by her side. "You're doing great," he said. The judge seemed sympathetic. Alice nodded, though her nerves were frayed. She glanced at Victor, who was pacing across the hall, his phone pressed to his ear. His confident facade was cracking, and for the first time, she saw the man she had once loved, not invincible, but flawed and human. When the court reconvened, the judge addressed Victor directly. "Mr. Sullivan, your wife's contributions to your household and career are becoming increasingly clear. Do you have anything to say about this?" Victor hesitated, his usual bravado failing him. Well, I guess she helped, but that's what wives are supposed to do, isn't it?" His response drew sharp intakes of breath from the gallery. The judge's expression hardened. "Marriage is not a job description, Mr. Sullivan. It's a partnership. This court values the contributions of both parties, whether they are financial, emotional, or otherwise." Alice's lawyer introduced a final piece of evidence, a bank statement showing a small but significant investment Alice had made years earlier. "Mrs. Sullivan used her personal savings to invest in a mutual fund," he explained. She didn't tell Victor because he dismissed her financial knowledge as unnecessary. That investment has grown considerably over the years. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as the balance sheet was displayed. Victor's jaw dropped. "You had money this whole time?" he spat, his tone incredulous. Alice met his gaze, her voice calm but firm. "I had foresight, Victor. Something you never gave me credit for." The judge leaned forward. "It seems, Mr. Sullivan, that your wife is not as useless as you claimed." Victor slumped in his seat, the weight of his arrogance finally catching up to him. Victor's lawyer scrambled to regain control of the narrative. "Your Honor, while Mrs. Sullivan's investment is admirable, it's irrelevant to the case at hand. We are discussing the division of assets, not independent savings." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Irrelevant? This investment demonstrates foresight and financial acumen, qualities your client claimed she lacked." "It is highly relevant." Victor fumed silently, his fists clenched on the table. Alice, emboldened by the judge's words, sat taller. For years, she had internalized his constant belittling, but now she saw him for what he was, a man desperate to protect an illusion of superiority. As Victor's lawyer continued his arguments, the gallery buzzed with barely contained whispers, the tide of public opinion clearly shifting in Alice's favor. When the court adjourned for the day, Alice walked out of the courthouse with a newfound sense of confidence. Her lawyer smiled. "Today was a turning point," he said. "You've shown the court who you truly are, a woman of strength and resilience. Keep that momentum." The following morning, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. Victor's lawyer, visibly frustrated, attempted a new tactic. "Your Honor," he said, "it's clear that this case is becoming a spectacle. My client has endured public embarrassment throughout this trial." He turned to Alice, his voice dripping with disdain. "Mrs. Sullivan seems more interested in tarnishing my client's reputation than seeking justice." Before Alice's lawyer could object, Victor interrupted. "That's because she's bitter and vindictive," he snapped, standing abruptly. "She's always been jealous of my success." His outburst drew gasps from the gallery. The judge banged her gavel sharply. "Mr. Sullivan, sit down," she ordered, her voice cold and commanding. Victor sat, his face red with anger, but the damage was done. His outburst only served to reinforce Alice's portrayal of him, a man who thrived on control and manipulation. As the proceedings resumed, Alice felt a small surge of satisfaction. For once, Victor's mask had slipped in public. Alice's lawyer called their eldest daughter, Grace, to the stand. At 14, Grace was mature beyond her years, a testament to Alice's unwavering dedication as a mother. Grace described her childhood in vivid detail, how her mother had been there for every school recital, parent-teacher conference, and scraped knee. "My mom was the one who made sure we had everything we needed," she said, her voice steady. "Dad was busy with work, but she was always there." Victor's lawyer tried to rattle her. "Grace, would you say your father provided for you financially?" Grace nodded. "Yes, he did. But money doesn't tuck you in at night or help you with your homework. Mom did that." Her response drew murmurs of approval from the gallery. Victor shifted uncomfortably in his seat as Grace continued to speak. "My mom sacrificed so much for our family. She deserves to be recognized for that." Alice blinked back tears, her heart swelling with pride. Alice's lawyer introduced a surprising piece of evidence, a letter of recommendation from Alice's former employer, written shortly after her marriage to Victor. The letter described Alice as an exceptional teacher, dedicated to her students and admired by her colleagues. Mrs. Sullivan left her position to focus on her family, the letter concluded. Her decision was a loss for our institution but a gain for her loved ones. Victor's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled him. "This letter provides context for Mrs. Sullivan's sacrifices," she said. Alice's former supervisor, Mr. Harper, testified as a character witness. "Alice was one of the best teachers we had," he said. "She had so much potential, but she chose to prioritize her family. That's not a failure, it's a testament to her character." Victor sneered as Mr. Harper spoke, but Alice felt a wave of validation. For years, she had questioned her decision to leave her career behind. Hearing her efforts acknowledged filled a void she hadn't realized was there. Victor's lawyer called his final witness, a financial analyst who attempted to argue that Alice's contributions were negligible in the grand scheme of their finances. While Mrs. Sullivan's efforts are commendable, they didn't generate tangible income, he concluded. The courtroom was silent as the judge considered the testimony. Alice's lawyer stood, his voice calm but firm. "Your Honor, the argument that unpaid labor holds no value is outdated and sexist. Mrs. Sullivan's contributions allowed Mr. Sullivan to focus entirely on his career, effectively doubling their household's productivity. To dismiss her role is to dismiss the very foundation of their success. The judge nodded thoughtfully. "I've seen enough," she said, her tone decisive. "We will reconvene tomorrow for my ruling." The next day, the courtroom was packed. The judge delivered her verdict, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Marriage is a partnership," she began, her gaze sweeping across the room. "Mr. Sullivan, you achieved financial success because Mrs. Sullivan provided the support and stability you needed to do so. To dismiss her contributions would be a grave injustice." She ruled in Alice's favor, awarding her a substantial portion of the marital assets, full custody of their children, and alimony to help her rebuild her life. The gallery erupted in murmurs as Victor's face turned pale. Alice sat motionless, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen. Victor stormed out of the courtroom, his face contorted in rage. Reporters swarmed him on the courthouse steps, their cameras flashing like strobe lights. "Mr. Sullivan, how do you feel about the judge's decision?" one called out. "Do you think it was fair?" another pressed. Victor ignored them, shoving his way to his car with an arrogance that masked his growing panic. Inside the vehicle, he pounded the steering wheel, his mind racing. His reputation, so carefully cultivated over the years, was now under scrutiny. Colleagues who had admired him began to distance themselves, wary of the fallout from his humiliating courtroom performance. Even his lawyer, who had been so confident at the trial's outset, sent a curt email terminating their professional relationship. As news of the trial spread, Victor's business began to falter. Investors withdrew, citing concerns about his integrity. Once the golden boy of his industry, he was now a cautionary tale of arrogance and hubris. For the first time in his life, Victor was forced to confront a reality where his charm and bravado couldn't shield him from the consequences of his actions. Back in her modest apartment, Alice sat at the dining table, the final decree resting in front of her. She ran her fingers over the embossed seal, a tangible reminder of her victory. But the triumph felt bittersweet. While she was relieved to have secured a fair settlement, the process had dredged up years of pain and self-doubt. Her children, Grace and Ethan, sat nearby, working on a puzzle together. Alice watched them, her heart swelling with pride. Despite the turbulence of the past year, they had remained resilient. "Mom, we're proud of you," Grace said suddenly, looking up with a soft smile. Alice blinked back tears, grateful for their unwavering support. That evening, Alice allowed herself a rare moment of indulgence. She poured a glass of wine and opened her old journal, flipping through pages filled with forgotten dreams and aspirations. She had spent so long prioritizing others that she had almost forgotten who she was. But now, for the first time in years, the possibilities seemed endless. Alice wasted no time putting her settlement to use. She enrolled in evening classes at a local college, determined to finish the degree she had abandoned years ago. The campus felt both familiar and foreign, a mixture of nostalgia and anticipation. Walking into her first lecture, she felt a flicker of self-doubt. But as the professor began to speak, she felt her confidence grow. She also started volunteering at a community center, mentoring women who were navigating similar challenges. Sharing her story became a cathartic experience, each conversation reminding her of how far she had come. "You've inspired me," one woman told her after a workshop. "I didn't think I could rebuild my life, but now I see it's possible." Alice smiled, her heart swelling with purpose. For the first time, she felt like she was living for herself, not as someone's wife or mother, but as a woman reclaiming her identity. Meanwhile, Victor's life continued to spiral. The legal fees and declining business revenue left him scrambling to maintain the luxurious lifestyle he had once flaunted. His new girlfriend, a much younger woman who had seemed enamored with his wealth and charm, grew distant as his financial struggles became apparent. One evening, Victor found himself alone in his sprawling but empty house, a far cry from the vibrant home he and Alice had once shared. He scrolled through his phone, his contact list filled with names that now felt meaningless. He hesitated before dialing Alice's number, a mix of desperation and regret swirling within him. When she answered, her voice was calm but firm. "What do you want, Victor?" He stumbled over his words, searching for the right thing to say. I wanted to apologize," he finally admitted. "For everything." Alice paused, her silence heavy with meaning. "Thank you," she said at last, her tone polite but distant. "But I've moved on. I suggest you do the same." Buoyed by her newfound confidence, Alice decided to start her own business, a consulting firm specializing in event planning. Drawing on her years of experience organizing Victor's fundraisers and networking events, she built a small but loyal client base. Her first major project, a charity gala for the local hospital, was a resounding success, earning her praise and recognition in the community. Word spread quickly, and soon, Alice was juggling multiple clients. Balancing work, school, and motherhood was exhausting, but she thrived on the challenge. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive. Her children beamed with pride, often helping her brainstorm ideas for upcoming events. One evening, as she reviewed contracts at the dining table, Grace placed a steaming cup of tea beside her. "You're amazing, Mom," she said simply. Alice smiled, her heart full. She was no longer just surviving, she was thriving. Victor's attempts to rebuild his life were met with limited success. His business ventures floundered without Alice's steadying influence, and his personal relationships remained strained. One evening, he attended a networking event, hoping to rekindle old connections. But instead of admiration, he was met with thinly veiled pity. As he sipped his drink in the corner of the room, he overheard two colleagues discussing Alice's recent success. "She's incredible," one said. "Completely reinvented herself. I hear her firm is booked months in advance." Victor's stomach twisted. For years, he had dismissed Alice as insignificant, but now, her accomplishments loomed large. That night, he returned home to his empty house, haunted by the realization that his arrogance had cost him not only his marriage but also the stability and support he had once taken for granted. Alice's consulting firm quickly became a household name in her town. Clients raved about her professionalism and keen attention to detail, and her events were often the highlight of the social calendar. Invitations to galas and networking opportunities poured in, but Alice remained humble, always prioritizing her family and the core values that had guided her from the start. One day, she received a letter from the mayor's office inviting her to a luncheon honoring local entrepreneurs who had made significant contributions to the community. The recognition felt surreal. As she sat at the banquet table, listening to the accolades being read aloud, she thought back to the days when she had doubted her worth. Now, her hard work and resilience were celebrated not just by her family but by an entire community. Grace and Ethan sat in the audience, beaming with pride. "That's my mom," Grace whispered to her brother. Alice glanced at them and smiled, grateful for their unwavering support. The moment was a testament to how far she had come, and a reminder that her journey was just beginning. One afternoon, while finalizing details for a charity event, Alice received an unexpected visitor at her office. It was Victor's sister, Margaret. Alice hadn't spoken to her since the divorce, assuming she had sided with Victor like most of his family. But Margaret's expression was warm and apologetic. "Alice, I've been meaning to reach out," she said, wringing her hands nervously. Margaret explained that she had always admired Alice's strength but had been too intimidated by Victor's domineering personality to speak up. "I should have supported you during the divorce," she admitted. "But seeing how you've rebuilt your life, I just had to tell you how proud I am." Alice was taken aback by the admission but appreciated the sincerity. The two women talked for hours, reminiscing about happier times and bonding over their shared experiences with Victor's overbearing nature. As Margaret left, Alice felt a sense of closure, realizing that not all bridges had been burned. Victor's downward spiral continued. His business ventures floundered, his personal relationships deteriorated, and his once charismatic charm no longer held sway. One evening, he swallowed his pride and called Alice again. This time, he didn't mask his desperation. "Alice," he began, his voice unsteady, "I need your help." Alice listened patiently as he explained his struggles. He was losing clients, and his reputation had taken a severe hit. "You were always the one who kept me grounded," he admitted. "I didn't appreciate it then, but I do now." Her response was measured but firm. "Victor, I spent years supporting you while you dismissed my value. I won't go back to that. You need to figure this out on your own." The call ended, leaving Victor to confront the consequences of his actions. Months later, Alice was attending a fundraiser for one of her clients when she spotted Victor across the room. He looked markedly different, tired, withdrawn, and noticeably humbled. Their eyes met briefly, and he approached her cautiously. "I just wanted to say congratulations," he said, his tone devoid of the arrogance that had once defined him. "You've built something incredible." Alice nodded, her expression neutral. "Thank you," she replied. "I hope you're finding your way." The conversation was brief but civil, a stark contrast to their previous interactions. As Victor walked away, Alice felt a sense of closure. She no longer needed his validation. Her worth had never depended on his recognition, and now she was living proof of her resilience. Alice's success brought her closer to her children. Grace and Ethan often helped with her events, learning valuable lessons about hard work and perseverance. One evening, as they prepared for a gala, Ethan asked, "Mom, do you ever wish things had turned out differently?" Alice paused, considering her answer. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But I wouldn't trade the person I've become or the life we've built for anything." Her children nodded, their admiration for her evident. That night, they sat together, laughing and sharing stories, the warmth of their bond a stark contrast to the fractured family life they had once endured. For Alice, it was a reminder that true wealth lay in love and connection, not material success. Alice received a handwritten letter from the judge who had presided over her divorce trial. "Mrs. Sullivan," it read, "your courage and determination inspired me. Cases like yours remind me why I chose this profession. Thank you for standing up for what's right." The letter brought tears to Alice's eyes. She framed it and placed it on her desk as a reminder of her journey. It wasn't just a symbol of her victory in court but a testament to her strength and resilience. Alice's business continued to flourish, and she began mentoring other women who were rebuilding their lives after divorce. Her workshops became a source of hope for those who felt lost, each session filled with stories of triumph and perseverance. At one event, a woman approached her with tears in her eyes. "You've given me hope," she said. "If you can do it, so can I." Alice hugged her, grateful for the chance to make a difference. Years later, Alice stood in her garden, watching as Grace prepared to leave for college. Ethan was beside her, eagerly planning his own future. Alice marveled at how far they had come. Her life was no longer defined by Victor's shadow but by the strength and love she had cultivated. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Alice felt an overwhelming sense of peace. She had fought for her dignity, rebuilt her life, and created a legacy of resilience and hope. The journey had been arduous, but it had been worth it. Alice smiled, ready for whatever the future held.